Hello and welcome back to Shanon series. If you're new to this channel, then don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing videos. Air Force One is more than just the president's plane. It's also one of the most iconic symbols of America. So besides the president, what's Air Force One carrying that makes it so special? For decades, Air Force One has been volleying presidents around the country and the world. So, what kinds of secrets does it hold? Well, for one thing, there's a lot of planning that goes into every trip the aircraft takes, even short jaunts. That's because each flight requires several contingency plans. Crew members are highly training and always on alert for something out of the ordinary to happen. So they spend countless hours exploring what-if scenarios. But what about those secrets? No one will ever totally know what the aircraft can do or what deep secrets it holds. But there are some really wild features that the president's plane has that you won't find anywhere else. Keep watching to find out some of these interesting facts and secrets that many people don't know. Number 1. There are 2 huge kitchens in the plane. It is really interesting to know that Air Force One contains not just 1 kitchen, but 2. These massive kitchens are always filled with food, and the president, together with any guests, can have any food they like. More so, the chefs are top-notch, and every kitchen can accommodate a maximum of 100 people, which is pretty big. Number 2. The plane has a small hospital. This plane is fully fitted with all the things needed to carry out medical practice. If POTUS or any other passenger on Air Force One is injured or falls ill, a doctor is available. There's an operating room and all other high-quality medical tools and a pharmacy. More so, there's an extra reserve of blood in the refrigerator that matches the president's blood type. Number 3. Triple deck and plenty of floor space. The Air Force One has 3 levels and 4,000 square feet of floor space. There is plenty of space for the president and his guests to stretch their legs while in the air. This triple-deck plane is impressive indeed. Number 4. Many TVs and phones on board. Air Force One has 85 phones because it is the most secure place other than the White House that the leader of the United States can talk. The airborne executive phone is very secure. It has a light on the back that turns red when the line is secure. There are other lines for the other passengers to use which have less security. There are also 20 TVs in this massive plane. Number 5. The wheel wells have surveillance cams. Former US President Eisenhower told the Director of Central Intelligence at the time, in 1959, to put up spy cameras in the wheel wells of the Air Force One. Those cameras were so efficient that they could clearly read vehicle plates from the air. It is speculated that more cameras have been placed on the underbelly of the plane. Number 6. At times, it is accompanied by a doomsday plane. In case something drastic happens like a meteor strike or nuclear warfare, the Air Force One is backed up. There is a 747 Doomsday plane that is always on alert. This aircraft can remain in the sky for days and has the ability to outspace nuclear explosions. Number 7. Top speed of 600 miles per hour. Air Force One can be able to fly at a top speed of 600 miles per hour, which is near the speed of sound. Also, it can get to an altitude of 45,100 feet while in flight. This is impressive because normal commercial flights fly at an altitude of 30,000 feet. Number 8. Refueled in the sky. Another cool fact about Air Force One is the fact that it can be refueled while in the air. It does not have to touch the ground to be replenished. Moreover, this plane possesses a fuel tank capacity of 3,000 gallons. Number 9. Air Force One is actually 2 planes. Air Force One usually sounds like just one plane, but in actual sense, the name Air Force One is the radio call name for any of the two planes that the president uses. It all started in 1953 after the Eastern Airlines Flight 8610 entered the same airspace as President Dwight D. Eisenhower's aircraft, called Air Force 8610 back then. In the modern day, Air Force One is used to refer to one of the two planes that are uniquely designed to carry POTUS and the passengers he travels with. Two planes means that there is always one to travel with in case there is an emergency. Number 10. Flying Fortress. The Air Force One is fully equipped to ensure that the President of the United States and his fellow passengers are fully protected. The plane's body can withstand a ground nuclear explosion, and all the windows are armored. In addition to that, there are flares on board that can be ejected to confuse missiles. Both exits on the plane have retractable staircases. Therefore, the crew does not have to depend on airport staircases which may be sabotaged by enemies. Number 11. Always in neat condition. Air Force One has to always be in a near-perfect state in order to lessen the possibility of an accident. Teams of contractors inspect the fuel that is put in the tanks and also ensure that the plane is always in great condition inside and outside. When the two planes are not in use, they are kept at the Andrews Air Force Base, which is outside Washington. They are heavily protected there by armored guards. Number 12. 13 media members on board. The president always travels with a large entourage on the Air Force One, which includes multiple aides, advisors on security matters, economic advisors, speechwriters, and many more, depending on the circumstances of the trip. You will also want to know that there are 13 media members who travel with the president too. They are actually referred to as Protective Press Pool, who are representatives of radio, TV, newspapers, wire services, and news sites. These journalists travel at the expense of their media companies and have to share the information they collect with other White House press members. Number 13. Air Force One has been in existence for decades. President Franklin D. Roosevelt established the Presidential Pilot Office in 1944, which was changed to Presidential Airlift Group. For the following 15 years, a propeller-driven plane was used to transport the president. President Eisenhower traveled to Europe on the Boeing 707 Stratoliner back in 1959. 3 years later, President John F. Kennedy was the first U.S. president to travel in a jet aircraft specially made for presidential use, which was a modified Boeing 707 plane. From that time, other jets have been used specifically by POTUS. Number 14. LBJ sworn in as president after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. November 22, 1963, Dallas, Texas. In one of the most famous pictures in American history, Lyndon B. Johnson is sworn in on Air Force One as the 36th President of the United States of America. Dallas Judge Sarah Hughes is presiding along with Johnson's wife Lady Bird and the visibly distraught Jackie Kennedy. Number 15. Air Force personnel and Air Force One. Air Force personnel make up the cabin crew that flies Air Force One. These personnel are heavily screened before qualifying to be members of the crew. Number 16. Every flight on Air Force One is a military operation. Every time the president uses Air Force One, it's considered a military operation by the Air Force. Whether it's flying to a foreign country to meet an emissary or flying to Camp David, it's still treated the same by the Air Force. Number 17. Air Force One will be replaced in 2024. The current fleet of 2 Air Force One jets have been in operation since 1990 during President George H.W. Bush's presidency. They will be replaced by a new fleet of 2 jets by 2024, and Boeing will produce them to the tune of $3.8 billion. Number 18. Air Force One costs taxpayers with every flight. It's estimated that for every hour that Air Force One is in the air, it costs taxpayers $206,337 between the fuel costs, the military costs, and plane costs. That's quite the bill to foot for every departure. Number 19. Air Force One has a lot of fuel. The amount of fuel that Air Force One carries is a staggering 53,000 gallons of fuel. The president can fly from Washington, D.C. to Tokyo, Japan, non-stop at an amazing 6,735 nautical miles. Number 20. The VP has his own plane, Air Force Two. The Vice President flies in his own plane, Air Force Two. This separation of President and Vice President is due to security concerns, and also upholding the line of succession in case of assassination. Number 21. Terminals? We don't need no stinking terminals. Air Force One has priority over any other airplane, commercial or otherwise, at commercial airports. The presidential flyer does not use terminals. Instead, it stays on the tarmac when the president disembarks. All other air traffic is halted while Air Force One is on the ground. Number 22. FDR was the first president to take flight, January 14, 1943. President Franklin D. Roosevelt boarded a Boeing 314 flying boat, also known as the Dixie Clipper, in Miami, Florida, to meet with Winston Churchill in Casablanca, Morocco during the war. There were stops in the Caribbean and Brazil and Namibia in Africa for refuels and rest along the journey. Number 23. Ike was the first president to take jet flight, August 1959. President Dwight Eisenhower was the first president to use a jet plane for travel in 1959. A Boeing 707 Stratoliner was used to fly to Europe. Jet airplanes have been used by the White House ever since. Number 24. President Ford bootlegged Coors, sort of. During the presidency of Gerald Ford, his staff would routinely stock up Air Force One with cases of Coors beer on trips out west. At the time, Coors beer was only available in 11 western states. President Ford was so fond of the beverage that he had the White House supplied with Coors due to the Air Force One bootlegging. Number 25. Speaking of beer, there were differences between Air Forces 1 and 2. Air Force One was alcohol-friendly with bourbon and wine stock on board. Air Force Two did not serve alcohol on board. Number 26. Miles of wire run through Air Force One. Nearly 240 miles of wire run through Air Force One due to 85 phone lines and the multitude of communications equipment housed on board. Number 27. Air Force One can defend itself. Air Force One is fitted with defensive countermeasures in case of attack. Flares can be fired from under the wings to throw off heat-seeking missiles. The outer skin of the aircraft is fitted with electronic sensors that can jam enemy radar. Air Force One can also withstand the concussive blasts of a nuclear attack with no radioactive fallout getting inside the airplane. Number 28. There were two predecessors to Air Force One. President Kennedy was the first president to fly on what was called Air Force One in the early 1960s. Two previous presidents also had their own personal airplanes for travel to and from the White House. In the 1940s, President Franklin D. Roosevelt had the Sacred Cow, a Douglas VC-54C, outfitted with an elevator lift for the president's wheelchair. President Harry S. Truman had the Independence, a Douglas VC-118 named after his hometown in Missouri in the 1950s. Bonus fact: Air Force One is completely waxed by hand before the president flies in it. Of course, The engine and other operational devices are checked too. But can you imagine how long must it take to hand wax a Boeing 747? And that's the hidden features of Air Force One. What do you think of the President's plane? Leave a comment down below. And if you like this video, smash that like and subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know if we uploaded a new video. See you next time!